Hey everybody, welcome to Rob's Game Group on YouTube. I'm Rob and I'll be your host through this series of videos. But first I had something that I want to get out there to everybody. I've had several viewers talk to me or message me and ask me about helping the channel, helping support the channel. And I've gotten suggestions from Patreon and I should do the coffee thing or direct PayPal. And to be honest, I don't really want to do any of that. And I've never been about monetizing the channel. But what you can do to help are three things. Like and share the videos, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this content, and now, if you look in the description of every video, you will find a link to the Rob's Game Group wish list on Amazon. Check it out. If there's something on there that you want to see me review or do a look at the book of, you can purchase it. It'll be sent to me. It helps me, helps the channel, without you sending money and me having to deal with that. I would rather just get stuff to help make videos that you guys want to see, guys and gals. So that's there. It's going to be in every video. Be sure to go check it out. You can also make suggestions to me in the comments if there's other games and stuff and products on Amazon that you want me to check out. I can add them to the list as well. You can just comment, or you can message me on Rob's Game Group on Facebook. Link to that is also going to be in the description. So that's just a way that you guys can help me help you with videos that you want to see. And speaking of videos, let's go check this one out. Hey everybody, it's Rob. Welcome back to another episode of White Box Weekly. And in this episode, we're going to start discussing my current White Box campaign that just started last night. So I am running a White Box Ravenloft campaign for my Tuesday night group. And it is not your average Ravenloft campaign. So I'm going to discuss how I set it up, or what the idea behind it was, how I set it up, and what I used to pull this off. And it seems like it's off to a really good start. So this actually started about 3 months ago. My wife asked me to run a Ravenloft game. She was like, I haven't played Ravenloft in a long time. I really want to play. And I was like, okay, sure, I can run a Ravenloft campaign. And she said, I got one request though. Okay, well, what's your request? Her request was no Strahd. Okay, Strahd's not the only Dark Lord. That's not a big deal. And it's basically because 9 times out of 10 when you hear Ravenloft, it's Strahd. It's Curse of Strahd, or Expedition of Castle Ravenloft, or playing the original module, or somebody doing their own homebrew but still using Strahd. A lot of people don't branch out and use the other Dark Lords like they used to. And I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people. And there's just been a lot of Strahd lately. But Ravenloft is a lot bigger than that. The Demiplane of Dread is, at least. So she asked me to do something different. She wanted that fantasy horror feel, but with something besides the vampire in the castle. Okay. Challenge accepted. I can do this. So I got to thinking about what I would use. Did I want to use one of the other Dark Lords from the Realms of Terror box set? Which, that's not a box set, that's a book, but you get the idea. Or did I want to make up my own Dark Lord and do something different? And I decided that that was the route that I would take. So, in reality, regardless of which domain you are in, each of them has a different feel, and it's based around the Dark Lord that is there, and each Dark Lord there is got some kind of tragic story involved with them, so on and so forth. I started thinking about it from a little bit different aspect than a lot of people do. I said, okay, well, first of all, I'm going to create my own domain and my own Dark Lord, and that way the party doesn't know what to expect, period, because I'm pretty much homebrewing the entire story. So I got to thinking about it, and I said, you know, I could take the theme of Ravenloft. You have the land that's, you know, surrounded in the mist, and you can't get out, you can't escape, and there's a Dark Lord in control of things, and it's a land of horror. But what type of horror do I want to do? So I took one of my favorite types of horror, which is Lovecraftian horror, and mixed it with Ravenloft and Whitebox to create this abomination, basically. So the first thing I had to do was I had to create a domain, and then I had to create a Dark Lord for that domain, and all the stuff in the domain, the encounters and adventures they would have, would all be themed around that. So I looked at Lovecraft Country to begin with. Well, first of all, I looked at the Realms of Terror box set because it has information in there on, you know, their suggestions for how to go about designing your own domain and your own Dark Lord. And I did that, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to do Lovecraftian. So I took the map of Lovecraft Country, and I used it as inspiration to kind of cut it off from the mainland and design my own area on a hex map. And I call it the Isle of Arkham, and it's surrounded in the fog. But I also took key places, which you really can't see all that well, but I took key places from the Lovecraft Country map and placed them on here. And I didn't fill everything in. There's still plenty for them to explore as they're moving around here. So I have my domain, basically, my area, and I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, well, what kind of Dark Lord could I do? I thought about just making up something, some kind of dark priest or whatever, and then it occurred to me, you know what, the dark powers of Ravenloft, they can reach into anywhere and pull someone in to be a Dark Lord. So in my story, or my game, the dark powers actually reached in to our world and pulled H.P. Lovecraft into this domain. And he is the Dark Lord of this domain. They're not facing him right away, obviously. So, okay. Now I do have a reason for him to be there and why it's a tragic reason, but I'm not going to reveal that just yet because I don't want my players to know that part of it, and some of them will watch this. I'm looking at you, Chris. So I'm not going to give that information out just yet. But I had my domain, the Isle of Arkham, and I have my Dark Lord. So then I needed to look at what else I needed to marry together to do this. And obviously I'm using my white box rules, and along with my house rules, which I've gone over in another video. I did a video recently about my house rules for white box. I'm also using white box Gothic, which is by James Spawn. I talked about him in one of my other videos too. He is a fantastic writer and a really good guy. And he did White Box Gothic, which was kind of his take on being able to play a Gothic horror campaign like Ravenloft. So I was able to use special rules that are in that for corruption, dread, curses, dark magic items, dark Ravenloft style creatures, some new classes that we could add in that were a little more thematic to Ravenloft. So I put those two together, and that gave me kind of my rule set and my available classes and whatnot for Ravenloft, and that seemed to work out pretty good. I also, because I was not just making mine regular horror, I was making it Lovecraftian horror, I've been using Eldritch Tales. And I bought the PDF of this a while back, and I have been through that so many times. It's such a fantastic book. I have the physical copy on its way. I cannot wait to do a look at the book for you guys and gals and show you all the Cthulhu goodness that's in it. Now, it is designed for you to play Call of Cthulhu, but using the white box system. But what I got it for was mainly for using the stats for all of the Lovecraftian monsters that I'm then putting in this. So, what makes Gothic horror or horror fantasy different than regular fantasy? To me, a lot of it has to do with the type of things that or type of adversaries and monsters that your players have to deal with. There's a lot of dealing with cults. There's a lot of dealing with undead. There's a lot of dealing with horror-based monsters. And because mine wasn't normal horror-based, it was Lovecraftian, I needed stats for Lovecraftian monsters. And this book gave it to me. However, after reading the book, it is fantastic, and there will be a Call of Cthulhu style game, an Eldritch Tales game for white box later on. So I had my domain, I had my Dark Lord, Mr. Lord Lovecraft. I had my rule set between this and the White Box Gothic and Eldritch Tales. So now I had everything put together. I just had to decide where I was going to bring them in and how I was going to set the story up. And in order to do this, I did exactly what DM James was talking about on one of his videos the other day. I got my campaign notebook. And now you don't have to have a fancy one like this, but I did. I've got a couple of them, so I figured why not. But I got my campaign notebook out, and this is where I put all my notes on the campaign, the players, you know, who's playing what, so on and so forth. I have 4 players in this campaign, and I also listed off like all the house rules and extra rules that I'm using for the campaign. But my 4 players are Tina, my wife, my friend Haley, my friend Chris, and my friend Nate. And because of the nature of the game and the way things are going to go, I allowed them to play 2 characters starting out if they wanted to. I didn't make them do it. It was a choice. They all chose to play 2 characters so they could cover some extra classes and beef their party up a little bit. So my wife Tina is playing a elven duelist named Carwin and a human cleric named Agath. Haley is playing a human magic user named Delphi, and she's playing also a human barbarian named Ari. Chris is playing 2 dwarven brothers, Davin and Alvin. One is a monster hunter, Davin, and the other is a barbarian. And Nate is playing a female elf magic user named Jessafir, and a halfling thief named Jameer. So they've got a decent mix in their party and some muscle. And after I explained how I was setting everything up, we got started with it last night, and it went pretty good. I had them start off very close to Insmouth, which is now in a fantasy setting, but it's still very similar to the story Shadow over Innsmouth, which I went through line by line, and I mapped out where the roads were supposed to be, where certain buildings were supposed to be, and tried to make it as authentic and close to Innsmouth in the story as I could. And yes, there are a lot of throwbacks to the story in there and things that are very similar to what goes on in the story. However, it's not exactly like the story. So even the one player I have who has read the story, it does them no good to know the story because I've changed things and the way things are going to work out. I also didn't do this when I set it up as a linear story. It's not railroaded. They're not just going from encounter to encounter. I basically got them started. They they started out in Barovia, and not them. A higher level group of adventurers has just returned saying that they destroyed Strahd and people are trying to go through the mist, and these heroes wanting to get out of Barovia, they went through the mist too, because Barovia sucks. So, they ended up on the beaches of the Isle of Arkham, not realizing they've just traded one hell for another. And the only place close to where they were was the town of Insmouth. So they ended up on a beach up in this area, and they traveled to the town of Insmouth, which was the closest thing they could see. And when they got there, I wrote the story to be just as, or the game to be just as thematic as the story was, how unfriendly the Innsmouth people are to outsiders. There are a few outsiders that are there, they work there, but they don't intermix with the Innsmouth people very much, and they got to meet some of them. But when I wrote it, I wrote everything, like I described the town, described the people, described the buildings that they would see, and I did steal a lot from the story as far as descriptions. They see the building, a lot of the buildings are boarded up or abandoned or whatnot. They do see the big church that's in not so great a shape, but there are, robed figures who pretty much have control of the church. It used to be some other kind of church, but now it says it's the Esoteric Order of Dagon, and they're all like, who is Dagon? So they end up moving through the town. Well, when they first arrive in the town, I did player handouts, which, like, here's you guys just arrived. I know it's not the greatest art ever, but, it was just trying to set an image for it. And then when I do my handouts, I just screenshot everything or take pictures and send it out to a group chat that I have going on. But they entered the town, realized the people weren't super friendly, and they looked kind of weird and have these big eyes that they never seem to blink with. And as they're moving throughout the town, they do run into a guy named Tommy Doran, who is the shopkeeper at the general store, and he is an outsider. He is not, he doesn't have the Innsmouth look, and he's basically their first point of reference to let them know the here and now, what the rules are in the town, what's going on, what places they should avoid, where are the good places to eat or bed down or whatever. He's your current piece of information that you hand to the players. And he is also the link who tells them about Zadok Allen, who is an old man, nearly 100, that squats out in the ruins near the North Docks. And that guy is a native, and provided some whiskey, his tongue loosens up quite a bit, and he would be willing to tell the history and the backstory. So you have the current and then the backstory put together. Now, in between all of this is all information that is doled out depending on where they go and who they talk to. The game, the way I've set it up, is very sandboxy. It's really driven by their actions, what they do. There are a lot of little subplots that I have stuck in there that are going on that they may or may not interact with. It just really depends on, do they see this thing happening? Did they go to the right area? And there's enough going on that there's no way they're going to miss everything. There are going to be things that pull them into the story and dealing with this cult, which in my world, in the Isle of Arkham, this cult of Dagon has spread, and they are taking over churches in a lot of towns and villages and cities and whatnot. So that's going to be something that leads to their big bad fight towards the end. Tommy also was able to provide them with a map of the town, and this is what I was talking about. I went through the story and kind of mapped out, exactly what streets were where, what buildings were where, and this way they have their sandbox in front of them, and they can go, okay, well, I'm going to go up on, I'm going to go off of Federal and Broad Street to this building here and check this out, or I'm going to go up to the North Dock ruins, or maybe they're going to go over to the Shoreward slums. It just depends. It's a sandbox for them to play around in. So what I did from that point, instead of writing a linear story, I just did events and encounters. And I placed them all throughout the entire area, and there's plenty of stuff for them to tangle with and get involved with. I also, since I had the PDF of the Eldritch Tales, I went through and I printed out certain monsters and adversaries that I would be using a lot in this story, and I printed them out at a 5x7, I think, so that they would fit. And then I started cutting them and putting them into the book. So I got my deep ones and all their stats right there. I've got an Octopod, an Avatar, Cthulhu spawn here. And I've got my stats on cultists, cult leaders, and witches over here. So that's some of the main stuff that they'll be dealing with. And all of that is at my fingertips. So like James said, and like I've said in my other, because I did a video on, way back when, on your campaign notebooks. This is invaluable. Keeps all your information together, and you're going to want to use that. So what did my players get up to last night? Like I said, they went through the mist. They ended up in the Isle of Arkham on the beach. They recognized that they weren't in Kansas anymore, or Barovia. And they headed up for the only structures they could see. The only thing nearby was the town of Insmouth. And like I said, they came into town immediately, no matter whether they waved, said hi or whatever, the most they were going to get out of one of these Innsmouth people was a nod. Most of them just looked away, avoided them, went inside, closed their doors. They were not friendly at all. I gave the description very similar to the book. A lot of them were tall with very taunt skin, big eyes that very unnatural, don't seem to ever blink. They very fishy look to them. There's something fishy going on in this town, right? So anyway, they move on into the town. They walk by the general store and they see Tommy, who doesn't look like any of these people, and he's friendly. They start talking to him. He gives them some. He invites them in. They have some cheese and some bread and some wine, and they sit and talk. And he doles out information, telling them about they need to stay inside at night. Outsiders don't roam the streets at night because the cult or church, the Order of Dagon, they get more active at night, especially at the end of the month, which it happens to be. What a coinkydink, right? So he tells them about the different areas. He tells them about Zadok Allen, and tells them where the boarding house is, about the coach that comes through once a month. And that's really the best way out of here, unless you want to just start hex crawling through the wilds. And that's never a good idea in Ravenloft. So anyway, they make fast friends with him, and there's he very much they actually trade gold coins at one point because he's never seen a gold coin from Barovia. And then they end up leaving there, and they started to go, I thought they started to go to the boarding house, but they changed and went to the bar instead, the Deepwater bar. Before they went in, they got a good look at the church from the outside, and they ended up going to the bar. There's 3 Innsmouth people in the bar that are just sitting at 3 men sitting at a table, watching them very suspiciously. The bartender, while he is willing to take their coin and give them whiskey, he is not a pleasant person, and he doesn't like them because they're outsiders. And he's very rude and very sullen. He's just not a nice guy. So they sit and debate back and forth about what they're going to do next, whether they're going to go, get something for dinner or go ahead and rent them a room for a while or whatever. But that goes back on and off for a little bit, and then the 3 Innsmouth guys that are in there, they get up and leave. And the halfling slips over to the window, and he's watching them out the window, and he sees that they are across the street next to the diner, and they are talking to some other Innsmouth men and one of these guys in the robes from the church. And they keep looking back in this direction. And then they end up moving on. The party decides at that point that they're going to leave this bar. They did buy a bottle of whiskey too, because they want to take it to try to get Zadok to open up a little more to them. But that's where we ended for the night. They're headed to the diner first because they wanted to get food. It wasn't a very long play session. It was more role play than anything, and a lot of descriptive stuff. But we had we spent a great deal of time actually making up the 8 characters that they were going to play, and going over my setting rules. And one of my guys, or 2 of my guys, had never played White Box before, so I had to explain a few things to them. They did play or one of them played Basic Fantasy, so he was at least familiar with an OSR style game. But after going through all that and then going through the play session, it was about midnight, so we cut it right there. I gave them their XP because I grant XP not just for monsters in this one, but I also grant XP per hour, because it's not going to be as heavy a combat game as a normal fantasy game would be. There's supposed to be a lot of investigative role-playing stuff, so I'm just granting XP per hour, and then if they do fight monsters, they're getting XP for monsters too. But it's everybody seemed to have a really good time with it, and it's going to give me an opportunity to use stuff like this guy. I'm going to have some high-level bad guys that have very much mutated due to their worship of Dagon and Cthulhu. But like I said, everybody seemed to love it. They said that they really got the atmosphere. They dug it. It was nice because it was different. It wasn't just the same old Ravenloft game. And we're going to be playing every Tuesday for the most part. So I'll be here on hopefully every Wednesday to make a video for White Box Weekly, and kind of recap the game from the night before and let everybody know what went on. And I hope you enjoyed listening to it. If you have any questions about things I did with the game or products that I used, you can feel free to put them in the comments below. You can hit me up on Rob's Game Group on Facebook. The link to that is in the description, along with the Amazon wish list. And I think that's pretty much it. Well, I hope that you found something in that video useful, or something you could take away from it. Either way, I appreciate you watching this long. Don't forget that we have the link to the Amazon wish list for Rob's Game Group in the description of every video now. You can click on that, check out the wish list. If there's product on there that you want to see me review, you can always purchase it. Amazon will do all the work, ship it to me, and it helps me help me make videos for everybody to enjoy. Also like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. And until next time, my friends, good gaming and good luck.